Is it time to panic, or are Arsenal just getting a little bit smarter? We've got to talk about another international pullout. And not only that, we've got a QPR friendly to discuss, which did not go well. Meanwhile, some fans are getting banned for some pretty horrible things. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It's going to be a slightly condensed show, probably around 15 to 20 minutes. As you can probably tell from being actually dressed for a morning show, I'm off to the office this morning. But of course, as always, I don't want to leave you high and dry without a show. So I'm jumping on quick and early to do a short, compressed, condensed episode for you, and still hopefully we'll tackle some of your questions in a slightly shorter part 2 as well. So let's not waste any time. Good morning to those joining us: Kaiser, Paul, Amira, AB, Alvin, Mods, Martin, Tucker Boy, Rowan, Stephen, Steve, Arasilki, Carlton, Darren, Tom, Damien, Matt G, Louis, Glenn, Rich, Mr. Ree, Answer. We've got Stevie and MD and Carl and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. Please do help us to get to 1,000 likes on today's video. Yesterday's show, amazing stuff, continually brilliant support. Over 20,000 of you watched yesterday's show, which is just amazing, and the continually impressing and humbling factors of this community only do astound me each day. So if you could drop a like on the video, that'd be hugely appreciated. If you are new to the channel, do subscribe as we try to go towards what is becoming gradually our target. Tomorrow, I'm going to share with you some fantastic designs that one of our listeners has put toward, if I remember. I was meant to do it today, but in the rush of the morning, I've forgotten. But tomorrow morning, hopefully, I'll be bringing you some fantastic graphics one of our listeners made for our subtotal target, which I'll tell you more about, as I say, in tomorrow's show. Right. We kick off with not the nicest piece of news, sadly, but Arsenal announced yesterday in a statement that supporters have been banned for tragedy chanting. So a statement on the Arsenal Reds website read, 3 Arsenal supporters have each received a 3-year footballing ban order after pleading guilty to a Section 5 public order offence, which is tragedy chanting, which took place at our home fixture against Liverpool on Sunday, January 7th. We strongly condemn this abhorrent behaviour, and we have worked closely with the police to ensure swift action is taken, and we welcome the football banning orders handed out. We have a zero-tolerance approach to the tragedy chanting and will always ensure strong action is taken against those found guilty of such behaviour. You can read the article on the Arsenal website. It's just disgusting. There's no debate in this. There's no opinions about this. It is wrong and it is unacceptable, and Arsenal are doing the right thing with obviously working with and collaborating with the authorities to find out who these people are and get them out of a stadium, because they don't deserve to be there, quite frankly, whether or not you're an Arsenal fan, whether or not you are anywhere else in the world. But if you are chanting about, I'll be making assumptions, of course, but we all know the tragedy that Liverpool Football Club went through. And we all know how wrong it is to mock and even talk about in nothing but respectful terms the Hillsborough disaster, for instance. So if you want an example of what tragedy chanting is, I really can't understand why anyone would need what an example is, to be fair. It should be pretty darn obvious. But that has thankfully been dealt with. And so hopefully it acts as something of a deterrent to stop more horrible people from saying more horrible things. Moving forwards, and Arsenal, as we talked about yesterday, lost a 4-0 friendly against QPR in a behind closed doors friendly, as I say. Only Thomas Partey and Takahiro Tomiyasu were involved from the first team. It was mainly under 21s that were involved in this game. I'll give you the full lineup for those that didn't watch yesterday's show, but Ejaheri was in goal, replaced by Rojas in 46 minutes. Nichols at right back, replaced by Zuzek on 64 minutes. Robinson, Foran and Tomiyasu made up the rest of the back four. Tomiyasu was replaced at half-time by Casada Thorne. Partey played 64 minutes before being replaced by Cabia. Miles Lewis-Skelly played. Gower played and was replaced by Bandera on 64 minutes. Koja Dubry was replaced by Ulad Hamhand on 64 minutes. And Bala Oyadeji played up front with Camara also in the forward line, who was replaced by Rosiak in the 64th minute. So overall, it was a mainly under-21 side that lost to what is described to be on the Arsenal website as a strong QPR team. Of course, QPR in the Championship. Hardly surprising, to be honest. The result doesn't matter in any way. All it is a fitness exercise, a training exercise, even if you will, to give some of these players some minutes, some time on the field whilst the international break is going on, and giving Tommy Asamoah part. Some people might as well be a little bit concerned that maybe Jurrien Timber wasn't involved. I don't think you need to be concerned about that. Arsenal are monitoring his progression very closely. There are other players, of course, that didn't play, like Gabriel Jesus and Benjamin White, for instance. So it doesn't necessarily mean too much. But what it could indicate is maybe Jurrien Timber won't be back for that City game. But again, it's really difficult to kind of get much of a background upon things at all. So yeah, I really wouldn't be taking too much out of this. But if you do want to hear more of my thoughts and Sophie's as well, we did do a show yesterday evening talking about the game in a little bit of a show. Actually, we talked a lot about the England national team. We talked about something else we're going to talk about in this show as well, which I'll talk about shortly, which is to do with Saka. And we talked a lot about Ben White and his situation too. So if you've not yet watched that, it is only on YouTube. It isn't available on audio platforms. So if you are an audio listener, you will have to hop over to YouTube to give that one a watch that came out yesterday afternoon. I was supposed to be doing a show with Alex from The Different Knock. We've had to reschedule that, and hopefully we'll be doing that next week. So apologies for the slight rescheduling on that show. Now into transfer news, and Arsenal are said to be closely following Real Madrid winger Rodrygo. The Brazilian international is apparently of keen interest to clubs that are monitoring the situation, Arsenal being one of those. Sports are the outlet in Spain that have linked Arsenal to the player. He has 8 goals and 5 assists in 29 La Liga games for Real Madrid this season, 13 goals and 8 assists and 21 goal contributions across all competition, which means he's getting a goal contribution around 1 every 2 games for Real Madrid. He's still only 23 years of age, and he's ranked as one of the highest valued young players of his age category in the world right now, and certainly would add plenty to the Arsenal team's forward line in terms of potential, depth. But he is more of a right-sided player that is right-footed, so he doesn't fall into the category of Saka being an inverted winger. Very much more a right-sided, right-footed player. But Sport as an outlet, I think they're the outlet. I might be wrong, so do forgive me, but I think they're the outlet that started to claim about Arteta's exit links as well. So I am going to take this very much with a pinch of salt, if you like. But there you go. And our headline story of the day, unsurprisingly, is Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka pulled out of the England squad yesterday due to a precaution. He's said to be a very slight, minor muscle injury, supposedly, so not too much to worry about at all. I think this is more Arsenal being very conscious. We talked about this also quite a bit on yesterday evening show with Sophie, if you want to get more in-depth thoughts and longer drawn-out thoughts on this topic. But yeah, Arsenal just being very cautious about this. This international break is known. It is really known for these types of situations to occur because they're only friendlies, because it is mainly just the managers getting last kind of looks at certain players that they know are going to be involved in summer tournaments. They're much more lenient about them leaving, and clubs are much more cautious about making sure their players aren't played if they are carrying something of a small niggle. So yeah, it's not an issue. It's not something to be worried about. It is said to be just a precaution at the moment. So yeah, no need to be concerned about this one whatsoever, I don't think. If anything changes, of course, we'll let you know, and we'll hear from Mikel Arteta next week. But I want to kind of temper people's fears from thinking it's anything too bad right now. To my understanding, it is only precautionary. I have to make that absolutely clear. But don't take any precautions when it comes to buying a ticket for, of course, our William Saliba signed shirt competition, which only has days remaining and tickets still left on this one. More than 420 tickets have now been sold. So thank you to everyone that's got involved with this competition, and best of luck to those that do. It is a UK only competition, unless you've got a friend of yours that can get you on in the UK, I suppose, before sending it out with some extortionate shipping fee. But it is a UK only competition for buyers of the tickets. Lots of instant win prizes as well, including plenty of other Arsenal defender inspiration. All the details of that are in the link in the description down below. So I implore you to get involved and try and help this prize sell out. Good luck to those that have tuned in and that have bought their tickets already. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, part two. As I said, condensed, shorter part two. So if you want a question answered, you got to be quick today because we're only going to be going for another 5 to 10 minutes because I'm shooting off to the office this morning. But we'll jump into the chat and we'll start with Matt G's question, which says, Tom, is it fair that QPR could use actual giants in the game against Arsenal? I'm assuming this relates to the picture that I used this morning. I don't know who this is, but they are very, very tall. Unless it's perspective, they are very, very tall, aren't they? I'm not 100% sure who it is, though. My QPR footballing knowledge, I can't say, is up there with the best. Temi says, are QPR now title contenders for next season? I mean, they're smashing Arsenal 5-0. I mean, it's practically a disgrace for the club. I mean, Arteta really should be considering his position at this point. Johan says, question, I agree with you in full on the nonsense that Mikel spent 700 million and so on. However, should we add the cost of the failed signings that we even had to pay off during that spending spree? So obviously this is not 700 million. Obviously, Johan, it's 590 million pounds. Should we add the cost of the payoffs? I mean, no, they were signed during previous regimes. The only players that we've paid off that Arteta signed were, well, I'm struggling. Can anyone name an Arteta signing that had to be paid to leave? I think Pepe's contract, obviously, he was signed before Arteta arrived as well, but I'm pretty sure that was pretty much ripped up. Ozil's contract was, again, a contract that was signed in the Wenger era. Kolasinac Mustafi also signed during previous eras. Aubameyang signed during a previous iteration. Willian waived the fees, so we didn't actually have to pay Willian anything because he waived it. There was a mutual termination of that contract, so that didn't cost us anything either. Pablo Mari was actually sold in the end. We actually got a fee for Pablo Mari, so I think we ended up making a decent figure on him. So I see a lot of you saying Willian in the chat, but yeah, Willian didn't cost us anything to pay off, quote unquote. So yeah, I don't think there are any players that in the end that Arteta's era kind of signed that we had to pay off at all. So yeah, Runnison, I don't know if there was any paying off of Runnison. I think that was also mutually terminated as well. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that that's what I heard, that there was kind of a mutual termination there. So I guess in answer to your question is, Rohan, is no, we don't add anything to the 590 million because these players that were terminated ultimately were signed during a previous iteration, and we've had to go through this massive process of trying to overhaul the squad with that 590 million, and it's led us to become successive title challengers and back into the Champions League as well. Pokemon Go Speller says, did you look at Sweden against Portugal? Gyökeres played and scored. He did score as well. They got quite well beaten in the end, I think, did Sweden. But yes, Gyökeres just cannot stop scoring. Mr. Football says, Isaac links are rubbish. Bruno will get sold by the Magpies. I don't think they're rubbish at all, by the way. Isaac could certainly be sold by Newcastle if indeed they got a figure that would entertain them. Arsenal and a number of clubs have had interest in Isaac for quite some time. That doesn't mean they're going to make a move for the player, but the interest, of course, does exist and has existed since his time at Real Sociedad. Steve says, first time listening live. Thanks for a great daily show and for getting me through the day as a poster. You're very welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for your service in delivering our letters, and very much appreciate all the work that you do. So thank you, mate. Johan says, I know it wasn't the 700. I just wanted to see the full picture, but that's good then. Well, there you go. So yeah, no was the answer. We didn't have to add really anything on during Arteta. His signings. Jack says, Arteta really got us out of the mud, lads. He absolutely did. It is stunning that you still get some people being rather skeptical about Arteta these days. It's bordering on questionable. Matty says, where do we think Mika Bier's future lies? Will Mikel Arteta give him a chance, or is he a player for sale? I mean, the club could have sold him in January. They could have had an option included in that loan to Sturm Graz. They denied that. They didn't want an option included in that loan to Sturm Graz. So I think there's still an open door to Mika Biereth, but we'll see how he gets on for the rest of the season. We'll see how he returns in the summer. And we'll also have to see what type of offers Arsenal get for Biereth also, which would infer what they might choose to do in this regard. Rich says, Tom, after the QPR match, should we let Arteta re-sign or do we need to make a point by sacking him outright? I mean, it's obviously the sacking option, isn't it? You can't lose 4-0 to QPR. It's a disgrace. It's an embarrassment. Should be ashamed of ourselves. Tony says, oh, come on. Finances are finances. If Arteta is in charge where we pay the players off, it's his decision. Tony's really going for a stretch here, trying to blame Arteta for those. Mate, Arteta's overhauled this squad. I mean, if you want to go back to the old squad, that's fine. If you want to do that. By the way, the team that finished in, I think it was fifth, or I think under Unai Emery, and the subsequent season after that, where we finished with Arteta to take over, we ended up finishing 8th with that FA Cup win. That team was on more money in terms of wages than the team that finished 2nd last season. So if you want context to that situation, if you want context to what the money side of things was about wages and stuff, we managed to rebuild a group that couldn't finish above 8th in the league to a team that finished 2nd and was paid slightly less as well. So there you go. Unbelievable. Johan says, could it be that we actually keep Partey and try to reintegrate Sambi Lokonga? I think that Partey's future will very much be determined by whether or not there are offers in the summer. You know, if Arsenal get a decent offer, they'll sell him. If not, he could stay for the rest of his contract, which is obviously another year. Sambi, I don't think is necessarily attached to Partey as kind of what happens. They've sent him on loan because he wants minutes. He still very much sees Arsenal at the moment as his future. And I don't blame him because he's having a really good season on loan at Luton Town. Gage says, do you think Arsenal having American owners could be the reason that we get linked with American players? I would love to see Yunus Musa get another shot. I don't think so. There might be an emphasis on wanting to have some kind of, greater presence of American players. We've signed American players. We've had Balogun, of course, who transitioned to be that's not the right word. What's the right switched allegiances to America from England, and of course you've got Austin Trusty, you've got Matt Turner that came through as well. Yunus Musa, of course, used to actually be at Arsenal as a youngster as well, and obviously he's now with Valencia. So I think he's still with Valencia, right? I don't think there isn't an emphasis, though, to sign more American players just because we have American owners. There are lots of good talents coming from the American leagues. And the CSL as well, the Canadian Super League, which has been recently established, is going to help the production and the development of talent in Canada as well. That's also worth pointing out. Let's go to Amira says, since it was mostly under 21s, was Arteta managing that game or was it Mehmet Ali? I actually don't know that. It's a good question. I don't know if it was Arteta that was there or whether it was Mehmet Ali. I don't know if it says in the article. Doesn't say who was managing the team, but it's a very good question. Elvin says, hey, Tom, I'm listening from sunny Barbados. Great show. Lucky you. Lucky you, mate. Matt says, members of the Ashburton Army. I mean, Matt, that's a pretty strong accusation. You'd need to send me the evidence of that. I'm not going to read that message out in full because I need to see the full evidence if that turns out to be the case. So, Matt, if you could send me the evidence, at the moment, that's just, I mean, it's an accusation is what it is, but I guess we'd have to wait and see. But I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying, you need to send me the information to back that up. Let's go. John says, how's your golf? Non-existent, John, at the moment, I'm afraid. It's still just been a bit too cold and wet. I'm waiting for the weather to pick up, and then I'll be getting out on the grass a little bit more. Gage has agreed. As an American Gooner, it's entertaining to see us having a few Arsenal players over the last few years. City just signed a 14-year-old from Philadelphia Union's Academy as well. Knowledge says, Tom, what brand of tea? I'm assuming it's tea. Because if it's not tea, then the other word you use, which I'm going to correct, is very strange. What brand of tea do I drink? It's just the usual Tetley's, I think. Pretty sure it's just Tetley's, mate. But I'm not the one who buys it. I'm not the one who picks it. The missus picks the brands we buy. So I just drink what she drinks. Yeah. Eddie says Arsenal to the world from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us from Kenya, mate. I've got one more question I can really answer. Maybe two quick ones. Derek says, would you take Leon Bailey for the right price? Maybe, but I doubt you're going to be able to get him out of Aston Villa for much less than a very high fee. And Leo says it's a bit random, but any interest in Joey Veerman of PSV? He's probably the best Eredivisie midfielder I've seen in a decade and would be a great buy. I actually talked about Joey Veerman a couple of years ago on the channel. Certainly a player that piqued my interest, and I wrote a couple of pieces about him before I was writing kind of more regularly. He was a player that popped up on my radar. But there's been no suggestions that Arsenal are looking at him, at least not recently, that I've seen. But there you go. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Over 1,000 of you tuning in, which is fantastic, especially for a Friday morning. I know some of you like a Thursday night out, so it's always appreciated. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8 a.m. to give you all the latest ahead of an England match against Brazil, of which I'll be in attendance for, of which there will be very little in the way of Arsenal presence, it seems. Declan Rice now and Ramsdale, the only remaining members of those teams that will potentially be getting some minutes. So that's one to look out for. Please do drop a like if you haven't done so already. It's really important on these shows that are quite short that you do. We always struggle to get those those sorted out. So yeah, if you could, that would be hugely appreciated. Always very humbled by your presence and by your support as well. So thank you once again. Drop a like, subscribe, all that lovely YouTubey stuff, and I'll be back tomorrow morning with more updates, more news, more thoughts and opinions and views. Stay safe, well, happy, and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.